Everybody, Mike Miller with the Herald Times, columnist Jeremy Price. Back in Bloomington after weekend west in Des Moines, the first and second rounds, Indiana staying alive, heading east to Philadelphia. The team leaves Wednesday, game on Friday. It's going to be a pretty interesting weekend. The Sweet 16, Indiana, North Carolina. We've seen this matchup a few times in the great histories of both programs. This is a huge matchup for Indiana, both literatively and figuratively. I think on one hand, obviously, you have to account for the hulking and deep front court of that North Carolina team. I also think, however, should Indiana get past North Carolina, I don't want to say they have a clear path to Houston, but this is definitely the biggest hurdle left on the potential road ahead.
It is. Obviously, if you're looking if Indiana should get past this game, it's going to see an opponent it knows well, either Notre Dame or Wisconsin beyond that. But like you said, big task looming ahead with North Carolina, a team that has sort of all the things that maybe Indiana's seen all this year, except for a little more in terms of the depth and options that it has. I think Yogi Ferrell called Kentucky Purdue on steroids. If so, then I don't know what that makes North Carolina exactly, but bigger than that, the Incredible Hulk or something.
You look at that matchup down in the front court with Bryce Johnson. I don't know how well this Indiana team matches up with not only him, but some of the guys they have around him. Kennedy Meeks for one, too. This might be a game maybe where we see potentially Max Bielfeldt back in the lineup like we saw against Purdue, like we saw against Michigan State. There's a lot to handle down there. You wonder if it's going to be a tandem of Max Bielfeldt, Colin Hartman, OG Anunoby. It could be a whole bunch of guys because it's not just Johnson. It's a lot of size they got to deal with.
It could be, and I think we might see a little bit of Bielfeldt and Bryant together, but I think it's more likely that we'll see in some ways maybe even more of Max at the 5 spot in this kind of game, because what Indiana's got to do is force the Carolina big guys to defend on the perimeter, which is something they're not the most comfortable doing. And it's one thing that forced North Carolina to a small lineup for a stretch of the Providence game, along with some foul trouble. But North Carolina had trouble with Ben Bentel because of his abilities on the perimeter, and Indiana has some guys that can kind of offer the same kind of things, whether it's Bielfeldt, Hartman, OG Anunoby, Juwan Morgan. Those are the kind of things that Indiana can do, and that's what they're going to have to do to move those big guys around.
We saw a premier backcourt matchup, Indiana versus Kentucky. It was Yogi Ferrell versus Tyler Ulis. It'll be kind of similar as far as a headline matchup with Yogi and Marcus Page this weekend. This is obviously a matchup these two guys are quite familiar with from their day in AAU.
Yeah, both these guys played together against each other a lot in AAU and played together in the McDonald's All-American game. So these guys are guys that know each other well, and Marcus Page said in a North Carolina press conference that he's been keeping an eye on what Yogi Ferrell's been doing from afar, and I'm sure vice versa. So you've got two guys that know each other but have also developed their games and expanded their games since then. The biggest thing I think for both those guys is the fact that they're seniors, they're 4-year guys, they're guys that their teams lead on for leadership. And that's what they bring more than anything else, regardless of how they match up head-to-head. It's that leadership that's going to be a key factor in this game.
You look at pace, Indiana, obviously a team that likes to play fast. North Carolina also likes to get out in transition. We've seen two or maybe 3 different sides of Indiana in transition this year. We've seen them get eaten up against Michigan State. We've seen them against Iowa, faring a little bit better. How does Indiana kind of match up with the transition offense North Carolina is going to give them?
Well, I think what maybe is as interesting as anything is how much can North Carolina run, how much can Indiana run on North Carolina, how much can they sort of turn the tables? Because if you think back to the last time these two teams played back in 2012, Indiana really served North Carolina a taste of their own medicine, and with Cody Zeller at the 5, really ran North Carolina off the court, and that's something that North Carolina obviously wants to do. Like you said, Indiana has had struggles in terms of transition defense this year. I imagine that'll be a factor again, but I think Indiana can sort of turn the tables around the other way as well. So I think that's something that can maybe be a strength for both teams. It's a matter of avoiding those silly turnovers that sort of gives the extra opportunities to run that's the key.
Friday night, it's going to be a late one, folks. You're going to be in the dark like this. Potential 9:57, 10 o'clock tip on the East Coast, Indiana, North Carolina. You can catch the game, I believe, on TBS. Jeremy and I will both be there. You can catch us on Twitter, Mike Miller HT at JP Price. We'll see you there.